What's up, Mets fans? It's your boy CP, and welcome back to the latest episode of the True Mets Talk podcast. The New York Mets are an absolute mess right now, and frustrations are growing higher and higher as each day goes by. We are here to talk about it as well as the rest of the 2024 season. We'll be here regardless if they win or lose. So make sure you hit that thumbs up button on this video, hit that subscribe button for more Mets content in the future, whether it's our pre-games, our post-game streams, or the Roundtable podcast that we do weekly. We will be here. Hit the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this team as well right now. And follow me on all my social media handles at CPNYSports, not only on YouTube, but also over on X and Instagram. Hit that follow button. Let's get into it.
You are now watching the True Mets Talk podcast, talking New York Mets baseball 24/7, 365 with your host, CP.
With the shout to right field, stumbling start for Stewart. Throws to deep left field by Alvarez. He's homered in 4 straight games for the second time in he's homered in 4.
All right, the Mets are kicking off a fresh series following a series sweep, suffering a series sweep against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Another NL West opponent comes into Citi Field, and that is the Arizona Diamondbacks. That series is set to kick off today at 7:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on May 30th, which is the time of the recording of this podcast. Christian Scott versus Zach Gallen are the pitching probables for tonight, but this game and this series just seems like an afterthought when you take into account all that's been going on surrounding the New York Mets as of late. And the latest debacle of a situation, the confusing situation that is the Jorge Lopez glove toss after the ejection, and shortly thereafter, his DFA by the New York Mets. This was a very interesting situation. Obviously, Jorge Lopez late in the game getting ejected by third base umpire Ramon de Jesus after he failed to call a check swing on Freddie Freeman. Jorge Lopez, obviously in the heat of the moment, lost his cool and he got ejected. And before he stepped into that dugout to go down into the clubhouse, he tossed his glove over the netting into the stands for a lucky fan who I believe was actually a Yankees fan to catch as a souvenir and take home with him. Now, this is where the situation gets even weirder because during his press conference or the interview, not even a press conference, the interview that he did at his locker, no translator was present. And the media basically painted this story in a way that we honestly don't know what Jorge Lopez said, but he was asked to clarify his statements, whether he said that he was the worst teammate or whether he was on the worst team in the MLB, to which Jorge Lopez did double down to say worst team. But now today we're hearing from Jorge Lopez on his social media accounts that the media didn't understand what he said, and they're painting it for him to say that he's on the worst team when he really meant that he is the worst teammate. Regardless of what he said, he is no longer on the New York Mets as they decided to DFA him late last night. And the reason for this DFA isn't because he said he's the worst teammate or that he's on the worst team in the MLB, according to Anthony DiComo and his reporting here today. It's because he brought disgrace and embarrassment upon the organization, according to the New York Mets organization, following the glove toss into the stands and the fact that he wasn't remorseful at all. When asked if he was sorry or if he felt any regret about the situation, Jorge Lopez basically said no, and that he'll be here tomorrow if the Mets wanted him to be. An absolute crazy situation. Like I said, a lot of confusion, two sides to the story. We still don't really know what he said with the direct quote, which is why I have it in parentheses, whether he said team or teammate. Regardless, he is no longer on the New York Mets, and they are down another reliever following this situation. But a lot more important in terms of why this Mets team and trying to find answers for why this team has absolutely just stunk it up, for lack of a better term, in 2024 is this core. So before we display the core stats here in the early goings of this season, comment down below What do you think Jorge Lopez said? Do you think he deserves to get DFA'd by the organization for simply speaking his mind? You see guys like Jeff McNeil throwing tantrums, throwing his bat after making an out. I understand that it's not a good look to not be remorseful in the post game, but honestly, the way this season has been going, you can't fault Jorge Lopez, in my humble opinion, for displaying that kind of emotion and raw emotion. Yes, he probably should have apologized in the post-game press conference, and he probably should have said that he met with David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza, because he said he didn't, and a lot of conflicting reports are saying that he did before he gave that locker room interview. So what do you all think? I'm very curious, because I'm still trying to make and process this whole situation and my complete feelings towards this myself. And I'm sure we'll talk about it on a couple streams from now with some different perspectives and when we do a pregame stream from here. So hit the comment section. What do you think? Let me know. But let's get on to the core here, because this is a lot bigger of a talking point and a lot more of an answer as to why the New York Mets are 16 games out of first place in the NL East. Yes, I decided for absolute fun, because these standings don't really matter at this point, given the way the season has played out, to throw up the updated NL East standings. Even the Nationals are better than the New York Mets right now in the standings category as far as the wins and losses go. You can see that on the right-hand side of your screen. It isn't pretty, but what's the most important thing to take away from this whole entire podcast is what you see on the left. And this core five of this Mets team and their respective statistics here in the early goings. I'm not going to go top to bottom and sort of explain the reasoning and what these statistics mean. They are bad. Let's just say that they are bad. And you can see that if you want to pause this podcast while you're watching it and take a look at how bad it really is, you can feel free to do so. I encourage you to do so. But here it is. You got 4 of the core 5 guys under contract here: Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo, and Edwin Diaz. They have not been performing well at all. But also Pete Alonso, who honestly probably has the best statistics, which is not saying much, of these 5 guys, is entering a contract year in which he wants to get paid top-notch dollar value at a first base position that's not really a premium when you take a look at the surrounding contracts that are given out to respective first basemen around the league, which begs the question of, do the Mets believe in this core? We've been talking about it time and time again. And is it time to dismantle this core based off of what they've shown us in the past 4 years? Outside of an outlier 2022 season, you look at 2021, failure. You look at 2023, failure. And you look at the early goings here as of May 30th in 2024, an utter failure from this core. And we can talk about the supporting cast all we want. We can talk about your one-year deals, your Harrison Baders, your Tyrone Taylors, who's not on a one-year deal, but you get what I'm saying. We can talk about the Omar Narvaez's, the Brett Beatty's, the Mark Vientos. But when it comes time to win ball games, your core needs to step up. And what you see on the left-handed side of the screen with your core 5 is an absolute embarrassment, top to bottom. And you can't pinpoint it on one guy. It takes a collective unit, and that's exactly what they haven't been. Pete Alonso hitting 231, right? His clutchness in question. Can he come up with a clutch double or a clutch home run when the Mets need him the most? For the most part, he hasn't. Francisco Lindor, on base percentage, batting average, hitting 211, OBP under 300. Brandon Nimmo, getting on base, but again, the batting average at 214, which really doesn't scream disappointment, because I know a lot of people take stock into the batting average, and yes, it does matter to a certain extent, but it matters about the clutchness and the timeliness that these guys are coming up into these in-game situations when their team needs them the most. And top to bottom, I can say for each single one of these guys, Edwin Diaz included, when it's time to close out a ball game, they have not performed to the back of their baseball cards, which is obvious. That doesn't need to be said. So it's no surprise the Mets are in this situation, because when you look at these guys in a nutshell, they have been failures. And that's just really the bottom line here. So now the Mets are Stuck in between a rock and a hard place. As it's not even June yet, and the deadline's just about 2 months away, what do you do right now? Because on one hand, I don't want to say you don't want to give up on the season because I think that you really should. And I think that when it comes time to the deadline, they are going to be sellers. But it's a bad optic before the calendar even strikes June 1st to give up on a season. And you can't trade these pieces or whatever pieces they're planning to trade this early on. But you're also stuck in a situation where if this is an developmental type year, which we all know that it is, even with the offseason acquisitions, even the fact that they got JD Martinez, we all knew, whether you've been a part of this podcast, whether you've been part of any other streams on this channel, you know that I've been very adamant this is a developmental type year to understand where the Mets are at going into 2025 and beyond. Now, a different conversation that we'll have, whether it's this month or the next month, is can the Mets fix this after they sell off these pieces at the deadline? Can they fix this in one offseason, being the 2025 offseason? My confidence level in that, and the fact that this is a 1 year quote unquote rebuild or a retool, like we have been sold on by the front office, my confidence in that is dwindling. But I do have enough confidence in them to at least put a better product out there, even if they do become sellers in this deadline. But that's a conversation for another day. We'll talk about that here, whether it's on this podcast or whether it's on our pregame or postgame streams. So stay tuned to that. But this is a problem. This is what you're looking at in this slide in a nutshell, the problem with the 2024 New York Mets. Nothing more, nothing less. We can talk about the pitching staff. We can talk about the lack of production from Brett Beatty. We can talk about Francisco Alvarez or Kodai Senga's injuries. But if you take anything away from this, it's that these guys over here on the left-hand side have not performed, and the Mets are suffering because of it. So I appreciate you all watching this podcast here on May 30th. Like I said, very dark times. I'm not sure if this is rock bottom. I don't want to say that it can't get worse because it probably can. So I'm not going to say that. But hopefully we have better times ahead. It's just hope at this point. And this man right here on the right-hand side of my screen is watching this team's and this organization's every move. Whether he's on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, talking about it, he is watching their every move. So like I said, hit that thumbs up on the podcast. I'm really intrigued and curious about what you all think about this team, not only about the core, but also the whole strange situation surrounding Jorge Lopez and the events that transpired last night, both the ejection and the Mets decision to DFA him. Let me know in the comment section down below. Like I said, follow me on all my social media handles at CPNYSports, X, Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff. Hit the subscribe button. On the way to 800 subscribers on the channel. I thoroughly appreciate it. Until next time, let's go Mets. See you all later. Peace.
Thank you for watching the True Mets Talk podcast. Make sure you're tapping on that notifications button and checking out all the latest content on the channel. Thank you.